When you're just starting with exploratory scenario planning, it can be overwhelming to choose the right technique for your project. In this video, I'll break down the 3 most commonly used techniques for exploratory scenario planning, explaining not just how to use them, but when and why to use each one. By the end of the video, you'll know exactly which technique fits your needs, giving you the confidence to move forward with your scenario planning. So let's get into it. The first technique we're going to explore is the shell scenarios approach. Developed by Shell in the 1970s, this method has guided Shell through some unpredictable times by exploring a range of plausible futures. Shell scenarios focus on isolating predetermined elements, trends that are likely to occur regardless of changes, and critical uncertainties, which are unknown variables that could drastically shift the future landscape. The shell approach is often unstructured or loosely structured, giving flexibility to the scenario development process. Instead of rigid models, it encourages creative thinking and open-ended exploration of different future pathways. The goal is to generate multiple divergent scenarios, each shaped by different assumptions about critical uncertainties. A distinctive feature of the shell method is its emphasis on engaging intellectual pathfinders and remarkable individuals to explore the fringes of conventional thinking. These thought leaders challenge assumptions and push the boundaries of what is considered possible. This allows organizations to better grasp the full spectrum of future possibilities, including those that might seem unlikely or radical today. Instead of rigidly structuring scenarios, the shell approach weaves loose narratives or plot lines around different combinations of critical uncertainties. For example, what happens if geopolitical tensions ease, but technological innovation stalls? Or if sustainability becomes a global priority, but economic inequality widens. These plot lines help bring the scenarios to life and highlight the interplay of different forces. However, it's important to note a couple of potential challenges. Building deep exploratory scenarios can be demanding, often requiring significant resources and time to fully develop. With several possible futures in play, organizations may struggle to prioritize or focus their efforts, especially when faced with scenarios that pull in opposite directions. Nevertheless, by isolating what's predetermined and what's uncertain, and exploring fringe possibilities with the help of intellectual pathfinders, shell scenarios offer a dynamic, flexible approach to future planning. Shell scenarios are ideal when you face high levels of uncertainty and need to explore a wide array of potential outcomes. It's perfect for complex, long-term strategic planning where flexibility is key. Next, let's look at a more structured approach, Dator's 4 archetypes. When thinking about the future, Dator suggests that any potential scenario can be grouped into one of these 4 categories. This archetype assumes that current trends will continue into the future. It's the business-as-usual scenario, where things keep progressing in the same direction they have been. Ask yourself, what if everything keeps progressing as it is? This is the scenario where things go wrong. Systems fail, economies crash, or societies fall apart. It's not something we hope for, but it's crucial to consider. Ask yourself, what if things take a turn for the worse? The discipline archetype suggests that the future will require us to adapt by becoming more disciplined, focusing on sustainability, or returning to simpler ways of living. Ask yourself, what if we need to adapt and become more disciplined? Finally, transformation involves radical change. New technologies, societal shifts, or innovations that completely alter how we live and work. Ask yourself, what if something completely changes the game? Jim Dator's 4 archetypes technique is a widely respected method in future studies and scenario planning. It helps organizations and individuals think about the future in a structured way by considering a range of possible scenarios. However, like any tool, it has its strengths and weaknesses. Here's a breakdown of the advantages and disadvantages. While the simplicity of the archetypes can be an advantage, it can also lead to oversimplification, where complex future scenarios are boiled down into categories that may not capture all nuances. The effectiveness of the technique relies heavily on the interpretation of the archetypes. Different teams might interpret the same archetype differently, leading to varying outcomes based on subjective views. This framework is perfect when you want to explore a broad spectrum of potential futures. It helps organizations balance optimism and pessimism, forcing you to consider both positive and negative scenarios. Jim Dator's 4 Futures framework is easy to grasp, even for those who are not yet experts in future studies. By focusing on just 4 general categories, it avoids overwhelming beginners with too many complexities or variables. Now we've explored 2 methods with great flexibility: shell scenarios and Dator's archetypes. But if you're looking for something a bit more structured with a focus on key driving forces, we need to talk about the 2x2 matrix. It is a simple framework, yet incredibly powerful. It's built around 2 key dimensions or driving forces that are both highly uncertain and highly impactful on your future. By plotting these 2 uncertainties against each other, you end up with 4 distinct quadrants, each representing a different potential future. For example, you could explore a matrix based on market regulation and technological disruption. On one axis, you might have strict regulation versus loose regulation, and on the other, slow technological growth versus rapid technological growth. The intersection of these forces produces 4 unique scenarios, each with its own challenges and opportunities. This technique works well when you want to explore polar extremes or binary oppositions that could drastically shape your landscape. It helps you examine contrasting possibilities, giving you a clear framework to analyze both best case and worst case scenarios, as well as everything in between. But here's the catch. The 2x2 matrix can sometimes oversimplify the complexity of real-world uncertainties. While it gives you structure, it doesn't always account for the messy, interconnected nature of change. That's why it's important to use this technique in combination with others, such as shell scenarios or Dator's archetypes, for a more nuanced view of the future. By the end of the exercise, you'll have 4 distinct futures, each rooted in the interplay of your chosen uncertainties. It's a great way to get started with scenario planning when you need a structured approach to tame uncertainty and create actionable insights for your organization. The 2x2 matrix is perfect when you want to explore 2 key uncertainties and examine how they interact to create distinct futures. It's especially useful for making quick, impactful decisions in uncertain environments. So now you have 3 solid techniques to consider for your scenario planning project: shell scenarios, Dator's 4 archetypes, and the 2x2 matrix. Each has its own strengths, and knowing when and why to use them will give you the confidence to explore the future with clarity. But here's the thing. Understanding the techniques is just the first step. To really master scenario planning, you need to know how to identify the driving forces that shape your future scenarios. Watch this video next for my full step-by-step guide on how to facilitate a 2x2 driving forces workshop. It's the key to uncovering the forces that will define your future scenarios.